Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi there, everybody. Welcome back. Okay, I'm going to begin here. I have another Substack up on the americanclassroom.substack.com. I would encourage people, again, to check this out and certainly move it around if you're interested. But it is titled Biodigital Convergence and Department of Defense Directive 3000.09. The biodigital targeting and remote killing of humans. This, of course, is not new. This is very old, and this is a subject, again, that Sabrina Wallace has honed in on because she has experience with it, as do a number of other individuals, but as she even brings up in her own research, this is a subject that even, again, the so-called alternative media doesn't touch with a 10-foot pole. And herein lies the problem. They may gloss over particular aspects of this, but they don't even go just one dimension deeper and focus in on what this actually means. And again, you have to keep in mind, as I say in the article, that you can take this subject of the wireless body area network and the digital targeting of human beings and groups of people, all of course tied to the wireless body area network through sensors and electromagnetism and everything else, that not only does government have the ability to target individuals and groups of people and make them sick and then make them dead, again, 5G towers, injections, the whole thing, but also, of course, the use of autonomous weapon systems and drones in order to target individuals and groups of people as well. That we really do live in a time where you don't need bullets and tanks and airplanes and bombs in order to take people out, even though, unfortunately, those are being used. And, of course, it also sends a visual message, basically, to a number of individuals who are being attacked or not being attacked, that even those weapons, of course, can be used against innocent civilians. This is a difficult subject, however, for your average American to comprehend, because, again, they don't want to believe that their government wants them dead. Even with everything that we've experienced and everything that we're seeing on a constant basis, they do not want to believe that their government has evil intentions for them, their family, and, again, depopulation as being an agenda. So I dive into this a little more specifically, but there's a part of this I do want to mention very specifically, rather. And there's, again, a number of visuals within the article which I highly recommend that people check out also. But I want to hone in here on Department of Defense, Directive 3000.09, which is titled Autonomy in Weapon Systems. And again, just very quickly, it's pretty obvious, again, that a layperson would look at this and they would say, well, Sean, it's highly possible that the Department of Defense would create this, of course, to do away with bad guys overseas, but no way in hell would they ever do something like this against American citizens on American soil. That such a thing would be completely impossible and, of course, downright illegal. Well, the fact is that they can. If they can cloud seed, and if they can manipulate weather and magnify storms, and even use telecommunications, so to speak, certainly 5G towers, which have nothing to do with internet, and it has nothing to do with internet that we citizens use. Again, it's a Department of Defense weapon designed, again, to be used as a microwave for a number of different things, and of course, weather modification is one of those. But again, a layperson doesn't even know that this directive exists, let alone look into it and wrap their head around why they would even create such a thing. So with that said, here's what I want to do. I just want to read a portion of this because it defines what autonomous weapon systems are. It also defines within the directive what semi-autonomous systems are, weapon systems. And then, of course, it establishes policy as to how they plan on using this. The other thing that people need to keep in mind is not only are these directives, of course, written and drafted by human beings, of course, within our government, but all of the visualization and all of the charts and the diagrams and the pictures and everything else, those are created by real people also. And again, there are endless individuals that push this because they believe it to be beneficial. And one of the, of course, things that I mentioned in the article is that, of course, weather modification it plays a huge role in all of this. And this plays a massive role in weather modification, such as in Roswell, New Mexico this past week, and certainly on Sunday, with all of the flooding that's been taking place there. Again, that's never happened before in over 100 years. So all of a sudden it happens? Well, why? And it goes beyond geoengineering. I mean, you're talking about using technologies and even drones potentially to turn off electrical systems on the ground, in the sky, from above, down below, in order to keep things from operating the way that they normally operate. This is something that gets done too because, of course, that creates more collateral damage or intended damage. And again, this is used as a distraction. It's used as, certainly right now with the election taking place and all the election fraud going on, it opens the door for more of that to exist. Again, this is a weapon. And if the Department of Defense creates these kinds of weapons, then again, you have to assume that they are using these, of course, against us, because this is government defending themselves against us. So when such issues arise, again, like massive monsoons or massive rain or massive storms or amplified storms in particular areas where they typically don't exist, then again, you should point directly to the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, FEMA, and all of these agencies weaponizing everything within the environment, land, sea, and air, in an effort to, again, wipe out human beings and create as much chaos as humanly possible. But let me define this very quickly here too. It says, first of all, the purposes of this direction are to establish policy and assigns responsibility for developing and using autonomous and semi-autonomous functions in weapon systems, including armed platforms that are remotely operated or operated by onboard personnel. The next one says, establishes guidelines designed to minimize the probability and consequences of failures in autonomous and semi-autonomous weapon systems that could lead to unintended engagements. And then the last one is establishes the Autonomous Weapon Systems Working Group. Here's their definition of autonomous weapon systems. It says, quote, a weapon system once activated can select and engage targets without further intervention by an operator. This includes, but is not limited to, operator-supervised autonomous weapon systems that are designed to allow operators to override operation of the weapon system, but can also select and engage targets without further operator input after activation. As soon as I thought of that, and as soon as I read that, I immediately thought of 5G towers. And certainly the smaller 5G towers that are maybe 20 feet tall, that are again located in areas where there are higher populations, whether they be apartment buildings, schools, hospitals, other places where groups of people congregate. These are weapons. Again, this is very difficult for a layperson to understand, but that's why they are there. They exist there because they are an autonomous weapon system. They can be turned on remotely from a distance, certainly from the sky, but also from some building somewhere else. And then all of a sudden, people around there or around those towers get cooked. And then they come down with massive symptoms of being ill and they don't know why. Smart meters. Same thing. Think of the smart meters that are now ubiquitous on homes. These are also remotely controlled. Again, the Lahaina fires are a perfect example. Those targeted blasts and those targeted fires were so specific that certain homes were being hit and certain homes were not. Those weren't just direct energy weapons from above, cooking a laser down from a plane or a drone and then setting something on fire, or again, hitting a power station and then power lines go down and then more fires, etc., etc. That was smart meter use. Those homes went up in such a specified way that it had to have been a direct hit on all of those homes via smart meters. There's also this, of course, the definition of semi-autonomous weapon systems. It says the following here, quote, a weapon system that once activated is intended to only engage individual targets or specific target groups that have been selected by an operator. This includes weapon systems that employ autonomy for engagement-related functions, including, but not limited to, acquiring, tracking, and identifying potential targets, queuing potential targets to operators, prioritizing selected targets, timing of when to fire, or providing terminal guidance to hone in on selected targets, provided that operator control is retained over the decision of select individual targets and specific target groups for engagement. Fire and forget, quote unquote, or lock on after launch honing munitions that rely on TTPs to maximize the probability that the only targets within the seeker's acquisition basket when the seeker activates are those individual targets or specific target groups that have been selected by an operator. Again, you have to think of those massive fires, and certainly Lahaina, Maui. It was far too specific. Going after those homes and those buildings, you can see how they're cooked, but of course the trees around them are not. These are autonomous and semi-autonomous weapon systems that are being used against the American people. Now, I understand, again, the last DoD directive that was mentioned and has been discussed, which I even brought up on the show, of course, which had to do with, again, the Department of Defense and military being able to kill civilians who basically uprise or take to the streets or go against government. Well, in this particular directive, 3000.09, they don't have to take to the streets to come against the American people. They can do it remotely. That's the fear here. But again, the problem is that this ties into the wireless body area network and all of the devices that we surround ourselves with. These devices can make us ill because they all have a frequency, just like we have a frequency within our bodies. Again, in these diagrams, they lay this out perfectly, and they openly say that these are all biosensors. We all have enzymes, we all have antibodies, we all have nucleic acid, and we all have cells in our bodies. Again, this is one of the charts I include in the Substack article, that we as human beings are receptors of all of this. We're 90% water. We were made from water. That's even in the Bible. But we were made of this, and again, we are electric conductors. That's why, again, it's all electromagnetism. When you're around individuals who are ill, it's possible that you too will also get ill. It's not a certainty necessarily, but that depends again on how much the cells within your body are disrupted. Certainly by, again, the disruption of the cells within the individual who is ill, because even they, of course, are conductors of electricity. Not to mention, of course, all of the wireless devices that people will wear on their person. The Fitbits, the Apple Watches, all of it. Again, I've been over that at length before on the show and certainly within Substack. But with this particular Substack, I want people to understand that these are government directives. This dates back even before George W. Bush, in 2007 with these particular directives also. And then, of course, straight through Obama, and there you have it. And again, it's not going away. So again, I recommend that people check out that article again and certainly move it around. I connect a number of different dots, and again, I just expand a little bit and try to break it down a little bit more based on the work of Sabrina Wallace, because again, her videos can sometimes be very, very long and seem a little overcomplicated, and then I basically just select pieces and parts of it and kind of toss it together just to try to make it, I don't know, a little more sensical maybe and a little easier to digest, I guess. But with that said, there is this which I want to focus in on and spend some time on. And in fact, I'm going to go so far as to say I am shocked that this has not been brought up yet. And that this particular conference that is taking place in Atlanta, the immediate days after the election here on November 5th, is highly suspicious to me. Again, I've tried to move this around on social media. I don't have a massive following by any stretch, but even so, this seems like a problem. This was tossed to me by a family member, and I'm glad that they sent this my way, but this is quite literally titled the 2024 Homeland Security Critical Infrastructure Conference. Now, this is taking place in Atlanta, but before I get into the dates of when this is taking place, again, highly suspicious, certainly the timing and certainly the location and the state. I don't think any of this is a coincidence. But again, the AFCEA is the host of all of this, and their Atlanta chapter specifically is the host of this. The AFCEA, I'm reading this from Wikipedia, is the Armed Forces Communications and Electronics Association International. Established in 1946, is a nonprofit membership association serving the military, government, industry, and academia as a forum for advocating professional knowledge and relationships in the fields of communication, information technology, intelligence, and global security. It's globalism. It's weapons systems. It's crisis management. It's crisis scenarios. And by the way, the AFCEA, again, is a global organization. They have conferences in Europe. They have conferences in Australia. They have conferences everywhere. It goes on here. It says the AFCEA provides a forum for military, government, academic, and industry communities with altogether more than 30,000 members. AFCEA supports local chapters, sponsors events, publishes a magazine, promotes STEM education, of course they do, and provides member benefits. So as I stated earlier, their Atlanta chapter is hosting the 2024 Homeland Security Critical Infrastructure Conference. And it says the following here, AFCEA Atlanta, their conference is taking place November 6th and 7th of 2024 with, this is the kicker, a large-scale tabletop cybersecurity exercise on November 5th, 2024. Why would you do that? Why would you have a conference in a major city in a so-called swing state that was stolen in 2020, with fraudulent elections every year in between then and now, and probably long before then, and now all of a sudden, you're having a large-scale tabletop cybersecurity exercise on actual election day at this particular conference? It's highly suspicious. So just in case anybody's curious, this is very real. I mean, this is a real conference. They have an individual you can reach out to, phone number, email address. I mean, they have a website. It's AtlantaAFCEAchapters.org is the website. You can check this out. And here's what it says. It says, AFCEA Atlanta is proud to announce their 4th annual Homeland Security Conference is back for 2024. This will be a multi-day event focused on critical infrastructure with a pre-conference cybersecurity exercise open to registrants who want to observe or participate. It says the critical infrastructure topic is only getting hotter. Come hear guest speakers, all levels within the government, speaking on a wide range of topics concerning critical infrastructure. What are the trends? What different agencies are doing? What contracts are coming out? Budget issues, emerging technologies, etc. They will speak on current policies, issues, and developments regarding cybersecurity, critical infrastructure, and other important homeland security topics. This event will be held at the Atlanta Convention Center with several hotels nearby. We're working on a pre-conference, Jack Voltiak, I'm saying that right, style cybersecurity exercise inspired by the Army Cyber Institute. It will involve representatives from federal, state, county, and municipal agencies, academia. See, they're tying that into always. So don't think for a minute that they're not involved with colleges, universities, and K12 environments. They always pull in the academics because those are the environments they're interested in brainwashing and or using for a false flag also. And then it says, of course, and industry. The exercise will include mock scenarios and engage participants directly. The idea is to understand how to better prepare and respond to events. No networks are harmed or even touched during these exercises. It says for general information, sponsorship, or to register, Please click here. For specific information about the conference or the cybersecurity exercise, please contact a Paul Wertz, WERTZ, at 770-331-5494, or email paul at sherpaworks, SHERPAWERX.com. Again, this is the president of the AFCEA Atlanta chapter, this Paul Wertz guy. The timing of this, and of course the existence of this, is all highly suspicious to me. Again, you're talking about not only this particular chapter in Atlanta, but they exist all across the United States in multiple cities. In fact, more specifically about this particular chapter, it says the following. It says, Atlanta serves the greater Atlanta metropolitan region to include Dobbins ARB, Clay Air National Guard, and Georgia Army National Guard centers. It says the busiest international airport in America, 39 countries, dozens of federal and state organizations, hundreds of Fortune 500 companies, and 6.1 million people, making it the 9th largest city in the United States. Great. All about Atlanta. It says the chapter gives back to the community, providing teaching tool grants, awarding scholarships to promising local college university students. I think they mean to say incentivizing, but a couple of typos here. Brilliant students with recognition at our county state science fairs, hosting small business industry days, offering critical support to the USO at Hartsfield Jackson AP during R&R flights, and hosting monthly luncheon networking events featuring speakers from the region's most influential military industry organizations. And like I said earlier, this is global. They have a conference just a few days later, about a week later, in Canberra, Australia, from the 12th through the 14th of November of 2024 at the National Convention Center. The MILCIS 2024 conference. They have another one here that they associate with, which is taking place in Washington, D.C., if I'm not mistaken, or online. Yep, December 13th through the 18th. The Critical Cybersecurity Training in Washington, D.C. CDI 2024, the 35th Anniversary Special. Again, on their website, it says that they have 30,000 members, 1,600 corporate members, and 138 chapters worldwide. This is not good. It just isn't good. And again, I'm shocked that no one's bringing this up. They might not, of course, know about it. But having a Homeland Security conference the day after the election, again, in a state that is ripe for the picking when it comes to voter fraud, not to mention, you have Brad Raffensperger, who was on Deface the Nation on Sunday, openly saying that the election in Georgia won't be counted officially until probably Friday morning, because they have to bring in overseas ballots. So he openly says, yeah, we're going to count all the ballots that we have in Georgia on election night, and that will be done. But we'll have to see about overseas ballots. He's openly telling everybody that they're going to steal the state and that it's going to take longer for these overseas ballots to be counted. It just seems to me that the American people should know that their government and these military organizations and these conferences not only exist, and of course exist all over the world, but they're actually taking place the day of the election and the days after the election, in a rather important state when it comes to, again, flipping an election for one side or the other, so to speak. Again, the Department of Homeland Security is Alejandro Mayorkas, after all. Does anybody trust him? Anybody trust anything that he's doing? And again, at this conference, they're openly stating that strengthening the infrastructure environment is much more complex, but DHS works to strengthen critical infrastructure security and resilience by generating greater understanding and action across a partnership landscape. They can't even keep illegals from coming into our country via plane or walking across the border. They can't do that. But people are supposed to meet at these conferences and act like what? They've got this all figured out? No. These people and these governmental organizations are creating these problems, and then they have these conferences where they all get in a room and they basically pass judgment on one group or another, say, well, there's more to it than this, and we can't just close the border, and it's more complicated than that, when in fact it isn't. You shut down the organizations that are flying in illegals. You finish the wall. You emphasize the security at the wall with any kind of security that you need, again, even if it be biodigital convergence, so to speak, just as long as it's used against the bad guys and not us. Certainly digital surveillance. But again, that's not what's happening here. They're running through scenarios of what will happen in a crisis situation within towns and cities, but they are the ones creating the crisis in the first place. Get a load of this last sentence, and this has to do with the actual event itself, which again starts with a tabletop exercise on the 5th, which apparently anybody can show up to, and anybody can sign up for this and just observe, if not participate. But then, of course, the rest of the conference takes place the very next 2 days. It says the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, leads the efforts to enhance the resilience of the nation's physical and cyber infrastructure by bringing resources to your fingertips. It says only working together can we defend against today's threats and collaborate to build secure and resilient infrastructure for the future. They can't do any of that. For all the reasons I just mentioned regarding illegal aliens, but what about voting? They can't even get a voting machine to vote correctly for the people or the issues that an actual American voter wanted to vote for. But we're supposed to believe that these people have our best interests at heart. These are the same people that sign off on these Department of Defense directives. These are the same individuals that utilize all of that biodigital convergence to weaponize anything around us that happens to be a biosensor or a conductor of electricity. Certainly the wireless body area network. We're supposed to trust these people? You have to be kidding me. There should be more eyes on this conference in Atlanta. Again, highly suspicious here. I'm not creating a problem or trying to stir the pot necessarily. I just think this is beyond odd. I feel like more people should be talking about this. It's right here. I'll link their website in the description below, by the way, in case you're curious or you think I'm lying. It's just too suspicious. These people have something planned. Why would they be there on those days at that time? I should mention this too, and this is equally as stupid, but this unfortunately is exactly who these conferences seem to attract. They love attracting foreigners. They love attracting blacks. And if you frankly get on their website, of course I know it's Atlanta, Georgia, but if you get on their website and you look at the pictures that they have of the participants and the entire Atlanta chapter of this, again, military group, the vast majority of them are black. And again, because it's a global organization, I'm sure that they love hitting their diversity, equity, and inclusion quota. So they do whatever they can, again, to bring in foreigners into their Atlanta chapter and then, again, have these people participate. And these individuals actually believe that they're a part of, helping the United States in some way. That I'm a global citizen, quote unquote, they'll say, but I'm interested in helping America and keeping us safe. They're just tools. These are brainwashed tools. It's like all of the college students that Sabrina Wallace has even brought up in her research of these individuals who are so brainwashed at such a young age that they believe that working for the UN is a good thing. That they put this stuff on their resume like it's attractive to people. Well, I worked at the UN, or I interned for the Department of Defense, or I did this, or I did that. All of those individuals are being used, and they don't even know it. They're just being used to perpetuate government control over the people under the guise of, well, the times are changing, and it's cybersecurity and infrastructure, and we need to keep everybody safe, and you're at the cutting edge of keeping Americans safe. Like I said a second ago, these are the same organizations that fly in illegals to invade us and kill us. These are the same three-letter agencies that can't control a wall and illegals coming here. They're the same three-letter agencies that help facilitate human trafficking and child sex trafficking, etc., etc. Of course, gun running, drug running, you name it. But they want to sell people on a conference that's somehow going to what? Save everybody? I just don't know who buys this. You have to be completely brainwashed in order to believe that these organizations and these conferences are helping people. And that right there again, just in conclusion on this issue, that right there should prove to people that this isn't pretend. None of this is made up. They have conferences for this, for God's sakes. There are endless research papers, white papers on all of this, all of these topics. The wireless body area network, these DoD directives, these weaponized systems on targeting individuals using biosensors which are under our skin because they're the cells in our body, and then honing in a wireless beam and an invisible beam in order to, again, take out individuals of their choosing whenever they want. This is undeniable. Again, they pay people to write this stuff. They pay people to put these conferences together. They pay people to participate in these tabletop scenarios, of which there are endless tabletop scenarios that have been both published, even, of course, video recorded and put online and put on YouTube, which I've brought up before, the whole Clade X, virus Marburg scenario with even actors and politicians participating in this thing. It's absurd. No normal human being would even want to participate, let alone entertain the idea of having such a thing around. But this is exactly my point. Sort of a larger point in conclusion is that this, again, is a perfect example of something that we have to see go away. We can't have these conferences anymore. We can't have these multi-letter organizations bringing in people from all over the world to play pretend and dress up for, again, a crisis event that government itself will actually create when, in fact, government is attempting to sell everybody the so-called solution. These conferences have to cease to exist. But until we see that, and they continue to meet like this and scheme and meddle and shake hands and give each other money behind closed doors and whatever it is, then we have no business trusting them under any circumstance. So know that this is a thing. And please understand that they're always tying in and pulling in academia. They need the professors on board. Some of these professors. You don't need an entire university to participate in such a thing. You just need the right people in the right place. And then they go to the conference, they get the messaging, CIA, and then they go back to their campus, and then they tell just a few people, and then before you know it, something pops off, and everybody's wondering why. This stuff is scripted. They play around with these scripts, again, having to do with human life and collateral damage and the murder of people for fun. It's disgusting. But people get off on this. They enjoy it. They think they're important. And again, there are very gullible people, of course, who attend these conferences and think they're making some positive difference. They're not. They're just cogs in a wheel. And they have no idea that the wheel is spinning and what role they're actually playing in it, which is pathetic. But it proves the brainwashing also. Okay, enough of that. Education stuff. I have two things, and then I'm going to round out the episode. This might not be a long one. In fact, just very quickly, before I get to the education stories I have here, and some documentation to read, which is alarming. Does anybody else just kind of feel like a shoe is about to drop here? Like when it comes to sort of news-related and world-related things, that there's sort of just been this lull in the action? That there hasn't been some like massive event that's taken place yet. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like something's about to pop off here before the election, but I'm not sure. Again, I'm not trying to panic anybody. I just find it, I find it interesting when these lulls sort of occur. Everybody's just kind of looking around, waiting for something huge to report on, and then all of a sudden something drops. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But anyway, with that aside, let me revisit a local story here having to do with the local school board and a very specific issue which had to do with busing. And again, this ties in a much larger national issue when it comes to American schools, of course, and their finances. The local school district here, about a year ago, decided to do away with their busing, specifically regarding their elementary schools. And that if you lived within a certain mileage from the elementary school, you had to walk to school. Or you had to find, again, other means of transportation, but busing wasn't going to come and pick you up, essentially. Now, they thought that this was somehow going to save them money, which it may have. But either way, it was something that never had to go away in the first place. And over the course of time, because all of a sudden they have found some money over the last number of months, they've decided again that bringing back certain positions is a good thing. And then in this last board meeting on Thursday, they decided to bring up, specifically the board president decided to bring up the issue of busing again. And that she decided essentially to put forth a motion to go back to full-time busing for next school year, starting next fall, in order to, again, alleviate this busing problem. What they aren't telling the public, although they all know this to be true, including the ethical board member Don King, is that busing was purposefully taken away as an idea from one of their board members, Pat Mead, who openly stated, and I'm quoting him directly when he said this, certainly to a number of citizens, that because the levy didn't pass a couple of years ago, that we're going to make the citizens of this town pay, quote unquote. That we're going to make them pay because they didn't get their levy, they didn't get their money, they didn't get the higher taxes and the kickbacks that they would get from that. So as a result, we're going to punish the public by taking away their busing, thereby making an inconvenience for parents, an inconvenience for students, and even putting students in more of harm's way, so to speak, because they'll have to walk a longer distance to and from school on a day in and day out basis, regardless of the weather. This was a board member's decision. A singular board member schemed this up. Now, he did it with help because he's not that smart to do such a thing on his own, regardless of how evil it is and how evil he is. But this was done on purpose. He, of course, did this with the help of the superintendent, other board members who said yes initially to such a vote, and what have you. So the national point, first of all, that I want to make is, and I know that everybody knows this, is that school board members, although I'm sure there are people who don't, but there are school board members who work individually and or collectively along with treasurers and superintendents to directly engage in retribution against citizens in that area. That they will quite literally take something away that doesn't need to be taken away, like busing, for example, to engage in retribution and revenge for the individuals in that town and or city for not voting for a levy that the school district wanted. Now here's what happened in Thursday's meeting. The board president, which by the way, this was the first meeting with the new board member, the new interim board member, I should say, who of course replaced the outgoing gay board member who, again, covered up numerous violent acts regarding his son and worked with other board members and certainly other district officials to engage in that cover-up, among endless other things, because he's a complete piece of trash. But with that said, this was the first board member with the new guy, and the new guy came in from Kentucky and being on a board for 20-some-odd years, so this dude loves meetings, which means he's a nut job, but either way, he came in knowing full well that the district had money for busing, and he said we need to bring back busing no matter what. Well, Don King has wanted busing to exist for all students the entire time also. But the other board members, again, they had the vast majority of them not wanting the old busing system the way that it used to be. 4 out of the 5 of them voted no on bringing back busing. But things have changed now. And all of the sudden, the female board president, Rebecca Howard, made a motion to bring back the busing for the next school year. Dawn King chimed in, and she said, excellent idea, which, by the way, it wasn't just her idea. At least the new guy and her got together and decided on this, but they knew that they had the votes to bring back busing. Point being, Dawn King chimed in and said, this is a great idea, I fully support it. Oh, by the way, why are we waiting? Why are we waiting an entire year to bring this back next August when we can bring this back, say, January or February? Now, they shot that down, which was unfortunate, and maybe, who knows, maybe they can work a little harder and bring it back sooner for students who certainly want it. But the interesting part in this motion and bringing this motion up was that it was clearly being brought up potentially without the knowledge of the board member Pat Mead, whose idea it was in the first place to eliminate it. And again, he was the individual who said, well, we're going to take away their busing and we'll make them pay. We'll make all the people in this town pay. So this motion was brought up probably without his knowledge. They went around the horn to vote to bring this busing back, which cost them something like $400,000, which they have. They have that money. So they don't need a levy in the future. I mean, they've basically figured out how to balance their books by and large. But even so, they went around the horn and they actually voted on bringing this back next year, bringing back the busing the way it used to be. Everybody said yes, except for Pat Mead. He said no. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, that's how you get rid of a board member permanently. That's how you send someone out to pasture. That's how you get rid of the riffraff. You bring up a vote, and they shot themselves, which is absolutely fantastic. They hung one of their own out to dry, which fits perfectly in line with the thing I've always said, which is the liberal snake always eats its own tail. And they just did. They just attacked one of their own and cut him down to nothing. So in the blink of an eye, the members of this town just found out that Pat Mead, no matter what, even when they had the money, didn't want to bring back busing because he's so wrapped up in retribution for the last levy not passing that he's willing to vote no when everybody else votes yes. This is how evil these people are. This is difficult for some people to comprehend. They are manipulators like nobody's business. And the worst part, of course, is they never had to do away with busing. Not ever. But it was a retribution revenge move to get rid of it in the first place. And they did. And what happened? Well, it was a typical reaction from the brainwashed public who still send their kids to these schools. They showed up at the lectern, and the microphone rather, in board meetings and started yelling at board members about busing. And why don't we have it? And what are you doing? And this is really inconvenient, and I don't understand. And, my kid has to walk to school, and this is unnecessary, and we're having a hard time driving him to school on certain days, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, they did create a problem for the public, but it was coordinated. It was scripted. They knew what they were doing. So to reverse their own horrible decision that they made in the first place embarrasses all of them, not Dawn King, but the rest of them. But again, in this vote, to bring back the busing, they just hung Pat Mead out to dry. It was perfect. Imagine that level of hubris. You're so evil again, and you're so wrapped up in yourself and trying to twist the knife in the stomachs and backs of parents who are, again, trying to find a way to send their kids to school, which, again, boggles my mind also. But at the exact same time, for those that are still in the matrix and still sending their kids, you're making it harder than it has to be on purpose because you're an asshole. This happens nationwide in this business. all of the time. They'll consistently look at people and say, well, I can't give you this and I can't give you this because times are tough and people just need to tighten the belt and they need to do this and they need to do that for our behalf and help us out. But oh, by the way, behind closed doors, we tell each other, if you don't give us what we want, we're going to make you pay. And they openly say this to themselves, one another, away from the public eye. But again, you talk about embarrassing yourself permanently, and I mean permanently. This board member, Pat Mead, who is, like I've said, is a lifer. This guy's been in this town since the crust of the earth cooled. The fact is that he just did himself in. He just shot himself in front of everybody. No doubt about it. He's done now. No one likes him. Everybody hates him. He can't run the next time for school board. That's completely done with because he's served on the board now for 2 terms. So next year, he can't run again. But he'll never win anything in this town ever again. He'll never win a position. It's fantastic. And again, he just exposed himself to every single parent, staff member, and every other member of the town as being a complete asshole. I mean, that takes a certain level of stupidity right there. He just exposed himself permanently, like I said earlier. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Hatred blinds these people so much that they don't even understand that the decisions that they make, regardless of what decisions they are, define who they are. Again, he just put the nail in his own coffin. So I love it. And it was highly entertaining to watch. And by the way, Don King's husband, Scott King, also showed up to the microphone during the public comment section. He was the only one to make public comments. And he openly called out the board members also for engaging in numerous unethical violations and potentially FERPA violations also. Again, one of the sick things that most of them are doing, including the superintendent, again, this does happen on lots of school boards across the nation, so people should keep this in mind, is that if you're an ethical school board member, the unethical school board members will open records request your emails. So they're consistently doing that. They're consistently open records requesting Don King's emails because they think that she has something to hide or whatever it may be, which of course she doesn't. She's the only ethical one that sits up there. But the rest of them, again, are going after her because she's the one holding them accountable. I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. But if these people, again, also think that bringing back busing is somehow going to put them in the good favors of the local citizens and the parents who still send their kids to these brainwashing institutions, it won't work. It won't work. With every move and counter move that they make or every role reversal that they engage in, all they're doing is showing everybody that they are manipulators of the highest order. They're bad at it, but they actually do get away with it to some extent because there are people stupid enough to not know that they're actually being manipulated by school board members. That happens constantly. I saw a clip just the other day. I think it was on, Libs of TikTok. It was a black school board president who was speaking out at some school board someplace, probably a larger city. I'm not entirely sure. It could have been New Jersey if I'm not mistaken. But either way, they were openly saying that they're putting a levy on the ballot and that individuals, if they can't afford the taxes that are going to come about as a result of the passage of a levy, well, then those families just need to downsize. That those families just need to do away with certain luxuries that they have, or they need to refinance their homes or do whatever that they need to do to just make sure that they have money, or maybe they should just live smaller. This is school board members saying this to citizens. I mean, you know my take on taxes. Anybody who votes to increase their own taxes is mentally retarded. There's no way around it. It's not charitable. You're not doing a good deed for other people by taxing yourself into the ground. You're a fool. It's amazing. I continue to find it amazing. I made signs that's on Amazon and stuck them in the yard that say, vote no on all tax levies. That's all the sign says. Vote no on all tax levies. I should have built another one that said, if you vote for taxes, you're retarded. That's a yard sign. But I just find it incredible. Absolutely incredible. Okay. With that said, I have a quick piece of audio here to play before I get into another local school issue, which again was sent to me by a listener of the show, who will remain anonymous. And this comes from how do I put this? A left-wing state on the East Coast. I'll just leave it at that. But they sent me their entire school board policy that apparently is taking hold with all of their school employees, of course, right down to classroom teachers. But I'll get into that in just a minute. This particular video that I want to play, though, it only lasts about a minute and a half. This is the quote-unquote European Network on Climate and Health Education, ENCHE. Now, you heard me say earlier, and even Sabrina Wallace has mentioned this, their target for these globalist organizations and all of this evil propaganda and brainwashing, their target is always youth. Because that's communism, and that's Bolshevism, and that's Judaism. If you can go after youth and brainwash youth into believing things that aren't real and advocating for things that are pretend, then they will do so, and you'll have them for life. So give this audio a listen. This is one of their PSAs, public service announcements. Again, the European Network on Climate and Health Education. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Increasingly, climate change is harming people's health. You could say it's the largest health emergency of our time, and I do need to be ready to help tackle this challenge.
Having climate and health training as part of our curriculum will equip us with the knowledge and the skills to both prevent and respond to health impacts of climate change.
That's why we're establishing the European Network on Climate and Health Education to increase teaching in this critical subject in medical schools across Europe and beyond.
This network will enhance our ability to collaborate and share best practices across universities.
This new European network expands the reach of the global consortium on climate and health education, deepening cross-continental collaboration and strengthening academic training in Europe.
Today's healthcare professionals are increasingly on the front line of climate change.
That's why health leaders from across the public and private sectors are coming together to support this transformative new network.
This new collaboration will help train the next generation of medics with the skills they need to treat the health impacts of climate change and deliver more sustainable healthcare.
Through this network, we will ensure there's greater education on this critical topic.
Right now, many universities across the world don't teach about the health impacts of climate change. This leaves a gap in our knowledge and readiness to help patients. I'm inspired to see that this is changing.
Evil propaganda, ladies and gentlemen, the largest health crisis that faces all of us worldwide. Climate change. Something that doesn't exist. No, the largest health crisis facing everybody right now is the biodigital convergence and the injectable weapons that they have injected into themselves, masquerading as a preventative medicine for something that doesn't exist. This is astounding to me. I'm going to run through this video very quickly to name the names of the people who you just heard. Lots of them happen to be Jewish. Shocking, I know. But at the end of the video, they show all of these universities and associations. Let me read them off quickly. There is the Warwick, what is that? Media something. There's the University of something, Milan, I think Italy. Let me see here. University of Sheffield, Lisbon University, if I'm not mistaken, the University of Paris City, the University of another foreign city, God knows what. A lot of German stuff here. Trinity College of Dublin, another foreign one I can't pronounce. University of Glasgow, another Spanish university, it seems. University of Warsaw, University of Lucerne, if I'm saying that right. More universities of a foreign language. University of Barcelona, UCL, University of Oxford, the University of Buckingham, Columbia University, also shocking. Not really. Let's see, University of something di Torino, whatever the hell that is, Lund University, Lancaster University Medical School, University of Aberdeen, Lyon 1, whatever that is, some organization, Nova Medical School, and then another one I can't pronounce because it is Middle Eastern, and then the University of Nottingham. Again, not good. Now let me run through the names of the people that you heard there, because not only are some of them youth at the very beginning, a Maha Olthman, Jewish, medical student, she kicks off the whole thing. Then there's Esther Nagoy, a medical student, an African, female, and then it kicks off with Professor Ian McInnes, the vice principal of the University of Glasgow. It goes on. Then you have the Professor Francisco Svelto, also looks Jewish, rector University of Pavia, if I'm saying that right. And then you have Associate Professor Cecilia Sorensen. I think Sorensen is Jewish, if I'm not mistaken, although I could be wrong. Columbia University Mailman School of Public Health, and behind her is that rainbow wheel. Remember the we're all in this together, we're all in this together, global rainbow wheel. That's right behind her on the wall, not an accident either. Then you have Paul Hudson, the CEO of Sanofi, if that's how you pronounce that. Dame Emma Walmsley, the CEO of GSK, which is a medical industry, so she's a murderer. And then, of course, to round things out, and I'm not even done actually, so it's not rounding it out, you have the CEO of AstraZeneca, Pascal Cerrito. I'm saying his last name correctly, so he is also a murderer. And then Professor Claudia Treidel-Hoffman, Jewish, University of Augsburg. It goes on and it finishes with a medical student again, who is clearly Middle Eastern, a Sumaya Arfan. And then that's the end of the video. Again, in summary, this is a perfect example of global government, global organizations, the moneylenders controlling the messaging, the funding, again, the evil propaganda, and getting people to actually continue to teach things that are not real. There is no such thing as climate change. If anybody still believes that, they should be institutionalized. There's geoengineering. There's weaponized systems that exist on a wireless level. This is real. All of that is legit. But climate change, and that somehow using technology recreationally or not driving an electric vehicle is somehow harming the environment. It's absolutely absurd. So, again, they have to go after youth because it's their only option. These individuals, as adults who believe this nonsense, can't openly speak in open forums on a constant basis about this subject because it's laughable. So they need children to do it. They need youth to do it to other youth to get people to believe that this is an actual thing. And it isn't. So there you go. Just wanted to play that for you because unfortunately that continues to exist. Okay. In conclusion, let me mention this now and read a little bit through this, and you'll pick up very quickly on the discriminatory and bigoted approach of this. Again, I'm going to leave the name of the school out because I don't want to identify any of this, but this is a policy, a public school-wide policy within a district, again in a left-wing state on the East Coast that was sent to me. It's 6 pages long. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will read pieces of it. This is there, again, under their policies. And it says here, it's beyond obvious, I think, but their philosophy is student excellence and success. It's a real brain buster there. It says the purpose is that their district is committed to educational excellence and success for all students, regardless of their identities and experiences. including but not limited to race, ethnicity, religion, languages spoken, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, citizenship status, and socioeconomic status. It says in their schools, every student is a deeply valued member of the educational community. Now, again, their first paragraph openly states that no one will be discriminated against. And yet, the very implementation of many of their policies discriminate, as you might expect, against anybody who doesn't fit within those policies. Specifically, if you're not a minority or you don't prescribe or subscribe to the degenerate LGBTQ alphabet soup bullshit. That's who they are discriminating against openly in this policy. You've heard me say it before, class action lawsuits against school districts by school employees themselves would put an end to this almost immediately. But they continue to do this because they know that they can, because again, they hold the jobs over everybody's heads and they threaten them with a loss of employment and so on and so on. It goes on here, it says, in alignment with these core beliefs, their school system should be a place where all students work toward demonstrating career and college readiness, ownership and persistence, real-world responsibility, and emerging leadership, CORE, C-O-R-E. They go on and it says, specifically, their school system commits that upon graduation, all students, and then there's 4 bullet points, here we go, this will be rich, possesses academic knowledge across subjects demonstrating critical thinking abilities and technical skills to thrive in their chosen pathway after high school. Well, we know that's not true, because no public school does that. The next one is approach challenges with a positive and proactive attitude, finding opportunities and resources to support their innovative problem-solving efforts. The next one, develop essential lifelong skills that benefit their personal and professional lives, such as goal setting, financial and digital literacy, time management, thoughtful decision-making, and civic engagement. Now, when was the last time a school system taught financial and digital literacy? Do they do that? I didn't think they did. They censor websites. They don't teach anybody about money management, let alone time management. These aren't things that are typically taught. I'm not saying they can't be taught or even aren't taught in certain places. But my God, they don't even mention, again, the law. They say civic engagement. That, of course, means activism. It doesn't mean teaching anybody about the Constitution or what the laws actually are, or anybody's rights for that matter. It says this policy ensures that their school district has the tools necessary to celebrate and affirm every student in its care and guide them to its vision of excellence and success. Now let me get down to the alphabet soup nonsense. They, of course, have educational equity practices, which you can take a guess as to what that is. Role of leadership, of course, they're going to support everything that they're told to support as a district no matter what, which means, again, 3-letter agency infiltration and a number of other things. They have policy development and revision, resource allocation, curriculum, instructional practices, and professional learning. And then they also have workforce development, so they say, the student experience, mental and emotional health. Here we go, let me read this one. It says the following, many of their students identifying as LGBTQ+, Black and or of Hispanic heritage perceive a genuine threat of violence and discrimination, leading to pessimism about future opportunities. Let me translate. They're openly stating that they have minorities and gays and people who are pretending, that these individuals perceive a general threat, which means it doesn't have to be real. It just has to exist in their pretend mind, that they are going to have violence aimed at them, be discriminated against. That's going to lead to pessimism on their own individual part, in their own mind, and that as a result, they won't have the opportunities that, say, a non-minority straight individual who isn't pretending will have, so they think. Well, I have a solution to that. Stop being gay. That's all. Just quit being gay. Quit pretending. Don't dress up like a cat and take a shit in a litter box in the boys' bathroom if you're a girl. That's all. Don't do that. Read nonfiction about real historic figures who built a functioning society. Don't pretend to participate in one that you're tearing down actively. And don't read books, by the way, about people who tear down society. Read books about people who maintained them and built them from the ground up and rebuilt them. And then, of course, again, quit pretending and stop being gay. That's the solution. It's not that hard. But again, these people live in pretend land. It says anxiety and depression have risen dramatically for all students since the mid-2010s. Now, why would that be? It's the school environment themselves. They'll never accept responsibility for the mask wearing, the shot taking, the distancing, the fear mongering, believing the fake school shootings, turning the entire environment into a police state. They'll never take any responsibility for that. It says risk factors and threats to health and well-being outside of school manifest as poor behavior, chronic absenteeism, disengagement, and prioritizing self-preservation over academics. Jesus. Excuse me. So they believe that life is so hard on them in all of their pretend land and them believing things that aren't real, that they are more interested in just staying alive than they are learning how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, comprehend, read, write, etc., etc. Again, the excuse making here is exactly why these schools fail. It says that their school system must become an environment where students feel a sense of belonging and can focus and fully engage in learning, which means, translation, play along with all of the pretend students who are mentally ill, because if you don't, you're causing them a problem, thereby causing us a problem as a district. The exact opposite is true. The district is creating the problem because the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and they're catering to the mentally ill. So stop catering to the mentally ill, tell them to grow up, take off their fake cattails, don't shit in the litter box in the boys' bathroom anymore. In fact, take the litter box away, and then everything will be fine. Oh yeah, you have to teach the truth also, though. See, that's kind of the problem, too. They're not doing that either. It says their school system will provide unbiased help and structure for students who require accommodations to achieve their best. More litter boxes. It will prioritize positive self-esteem, which doesn't exist, healthy lifestyle choices, and student agency. Diverse mental health professionals who practice in culturally affirming spaces will be available to students. Beyond this, their school system will consistently provide all students access to compassionate, empathetic adults. No, they're going to cater to the mentally ill by hiring mentally ill counselors and school psychologists who cater to this pretend behavior, instead of slapping them across the face and saying, you're dressed like a cat who shits in a litter box, you should probably cut that out, because no one's going to take you seriously. Get a haircut, wear clothes that fit, and look like a goddamn human being. But see, they're not going to do that, because apparently everybody's been raised by wolves, real gay wolves, who speak their own language. I really don't get this. I mean, I get it. It's the, the inmates are running the asylum here. Support and safe school cultures. This will be good. Their school district will foster positive, safe, and engaging school cultures free from bullying and microaggressions for all students, it says. Is that right? See, here's what they also don't understand. white, straight, and even if they're not white, but they're just straight and straight-laced individuals who are polite and intelligent, which, let's face it, those people don't go to public school. But either way, there are some who do. Those individuals who do go to public school, that when we have to see, or they rather have to see, the mentally ill children and teenagers walking around pretending to be gay and engaging in the LGBT soup nonsense, that is insulting and degrading to them as normal human beings. No different than, again, the non-mask wearing people being around the mask wearing people. Being around the mask wearing people and seeing them wear masks was insulting to us. It was demoralizing for us. But this is what the environment doesn't understand, is that they're being told to engage in all of these perverse actions and then of course make them school policy, because the ultimate plan is to demoralize the morally sound and the value-driven human being. That's the scheme here. And it's not working. It's pissing off endless people, and it's causing individuals to become more morally sound and more value-driven and actually become a little bit harder, which is good, and built of steel and granite, which is good. It goes on here. It says, all adult staff will embrace and model a vision for behavior management that teaches the skills of empathy and self-regulation. There's that term again. You need to self-regulate. All adult staff will build relationships with students inside and outside the classroom. Huge mistake. Huge mistake. That opens up endless horrible things to happen. Sexual grooming, inappropriate communications online, a number of things. It's awful. And then, of course, they say this. Can't make this up. Additionally, their school district will employ restorative practices. Remember that one? Remember restorative practices? It's basically excuse making, that no one's going to get expelled. They'll hardly be suspended outside of school for any particular reason, let alone inside of school, and we will just, again, get them to use verbiage that makes it sound like they regret the decision that they made and they'll never do it again. More peer mediation, more nonsense. It's ridiculous. And then they go on, unfortunately, and they say, developmentally appropriate ways they will implement that, and focusing on personal growth, learning, and healing. No, you won't. It says punitive discipline will be reserved for only the most egregious behavior. They think that's punitive. It says the discipline procedures and processes will be centered on accountability and change. No, they won't. It says the school district will ensure all staff have the knowledge and skills to implement these practices. And then they want families to get engaged. And then it wraps up and it says that they regularly celebrate student growth and accomplishments in various disciplines, providing multiple opportunities for families to participate. And their district will collaborate with community leaders, families, and organizations who represent the demographic of the student body to promote and celebrate representation and cultural inclusion, while also strengthening the school and community connection. Their district will help families and caregivers to overcome barriers to participation in school events and collaborative groups. This support may include providing meals, childcare, language translation, and transportation, unquote. It just screams bringing in illegal aliens too, does it not? These policies are being written and rewritten to cater to illegal aliens, the mentally ill, and then cater to the adults who are both of those categories to then bring them in to be employees for the students who are minorities, illegal aliens, and the mentally ill. This is the business, and it's a business that is collapsing. It's not going to get better. The more policy they write, the worse things become. Class action lawsuit. Because nowhere in there do they say, we're going to protect whites. or we're going to protect individuals who are straight, or we're going to keep those individuals safe from other individuals. They throw in the term all students, or the phrase all students, to encompass everybody, but you can see how in the document, and here rather within the document, how they specifically highlight the alphabet soup participants and minority students, and how by default these individuals are just being discriminated against. I don't think they're being discriminated against. They're just being looked at like they're crazy because, well, if they're dressing up like cats, shitting in litter boxes, and pretending to be gay when they're not, then yeah, they're crazy. But again, this is the business. This is the direction it continues to go in, full steam ahead, fifth gear, pedal to the floor. Good times, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. With that said, thank you for listening as always. Make sure and check out the Substack if you are interested. I will link that in the description below. I feel like there's a shoe about to drop here, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lull in the action. And voter fraud, of course, continues to be rampant. I have more on that subject to bring to people's attention on Friday, but thank you for listening as always, and I'll catch you then. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.